Welcome, everybody. I'm so excited that you're here. Welcome to the Right Mind. A couple of reminders before we get cracking. We are going to make sure that everybody's audio is muted. Please mute your audio if your name is not Paul, Stephen, or me. Please mute your audio. And we're going to go ahead and get cracking. This is The Right Mind. It's Austin Community College's creative writing department discussion series with the smartest people in the business. And we have the two probably, I'm going to say, smartest horror writers working right now. Stephen Graham Jones and Paul Tremblay. Stephen Graham Jones is the New York Times bestselling author of 35 or so novels and collections. There's some novellas and comic books in there as well. Most recent are Earth Divers, I Was a Teenage Slasher, and The Buffalo Hunter Hunter. Before too long, The Third True Believers and Killer on the Road, The Babysitter Lives, which this Killer on the Road, The Babysitter Lives are in the world. They're out in the world now.
Mhm.
Out on the road, as it were. Stephen lives and teaches in Boulder, Colorado. Paul Tremblay has won the Bram Stoker British Fantasy and Massachusetts Book Awards and is the author of Survivor Song, The Cabin at the End of the World, Disappearance at Devil's Rock, uh, A Head Full of Ghosts, and the crime novels The Little Sleep and No Sleep Till Wonderland, and the short story collection Growing Things and Other Stories. His essays and short fiction have appeared in the Los Angeles Times, New York Times, Entertainment Weekly Online, and numerous year's best anthologies. He has a master's degree in mathematics and lives outside Boston with his family. Thank you so much, the both of you, for being here. We are really lucky to have your time, and thank you. Welcome.
Happy to be here, man.
Yeah, thank you. Although I don't know how smart I feel since I finished eating a really big burrito at 4:45.
I
I
just
I
saw
apologize if things happened.
I just saw a friend of mine begging for mission style burritos, these giant, like bigger than your forearm.
Huh,
It's a California thing. And
really?
Yeah.
yeah, and, in Austin, we don't have them. We have all of the breakfast tacos you could possibly want.
Wow.
Burritos another thing though.
Yeah,
Huh.
I asked the guy, not that anyone needs to know, but for instead of two scoops of rice, I asked for one scoop of brown rice because that's sort of like Tenacious D when Jack Black says he wants a soda, half Coke, half Diet Coke to be healthier.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
he didn't listen to me. He gave me the two scoops of rice.
And a
Oh
I
man.
still
junior
ate it.
bacon cheese.
Anyway.
Um, let's dive in. I want to start, Paul. The list of novels in your bio: Survivor Song, Cabin at the End of the World, Disappearance at Devil's Rock, Head Full of Ghosts, all deal in some way with family trauma and kind of becoming of some kind. Lots of adolescent, we might call them coming of age. Survivor Song, becoming a survivor. And I want to think about and I want to talk about how horror ends up being the best vessel for those themes for you.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is just, as I'm sure you've all discussed in writing classes, that like write what you know is terrible advice, but write what you're obsessed about
Mm.
is great advice because it's going to be there anyway. And for much of the first decade of the 2000s, when I was mainly writing short fiction, um, a friend pointed out to me, he's like, you write about a lot about teens and kids and parents, and I had no idea. I mean, it was
Mm.
so obvious. So by the time, A Head Full of Ghosts came around, it was something I obviously, once I had the spark for the story, I sort of leaned into it. And then the next two books, in my mind, it became like this, not a trilogy per se, but three books with similar themes. So, A Head Full of Ghosts, Disappearance of Devil's Rock, and The Cabin at the End of the World, all thematically linked by different kinds of families and extremists and, um, dealing with like horror that's sort of like being visited upon them from outside forces.
Mm.
It isn't necessarily, and it's definitely not necessarily, not even at all their fault as to what's happening.
Right,
So,
right.
um, yeah, I don't know. I can't say that the becoming part of it, which is really cool. Like I've all the interviews I've done, like no one's ever put it to me that way. But I think you're 100% correct. I've never sort of thought of it in those terms. Um, so I've never been sort of that intentional about it. I'd be interested to see what Steven says about that. But for me, it's just sort of I don't know. Sometimes it's a little bit of a logic game about like when I put these people into a situation and then try to build out from it,
Mm.
just to try to, I think the thing that I am intentional about, let me answer this slightly better or attempt to, uh, is I don't know, I want my stories to feel as realistic as possible, which is maybe a little bit glib to say, but like I really, have this like inner skeptic, agnostic in my head, especially with novels. And so, when I take these scenarios, I want to try to make them, this is, if this was really happening like right now, what would this feel like? What would this look like? Um, those are probably the most like intentional parts that I approach it. And then so much of it is just, trusting your gut, following your subconscious or my subconscious anyway.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of got into that conversation in my creative writing class today about I Know You're There and how thematically we're kind of coming back to as writers, we're coming back to theme in later drafts and later thoughts because we start with, as you were saying, like characters we care about wanting something and then reacting to a situation that's put upon them, right? And you're kind of echoing that, so it's validating for me and my
Okay.
students that are here. Now they know that I know what I'm talking about.
Hey,
Um,
also to add on to Paul's answer, not for him, maybe for me, like just mechanically, if when you include family in a horror story, I think that story or novel gets to be 15-20% shorter because if my protagonist or somebody in the novel is having to care about saving their sister as opposed to saving a random person at a bus stop, that the audience, the readers understand why I want to save that sister, you know.
mhm.
But if they want to understand why I want to save that person at the bus stop, I've got to write 40 pages to make that person a real person, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
That's a great point. I'm actually kind of having not that problem, but confronting that with this book that I
Mhm.
just barely started.
Mhm.
It's not going to be siblings. I'm like, oh, if I add these two college friends, I kind of have to add more of them.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
can't just be there to
yeah.
hold up a sign.
You
Yeah,
can like call them important college friend, you know?
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Uh, I wish we could just throw the word important in front of a character and be like, that's all we need there, right? That'd be pretty great. So I want to think about the same thing, Stephen, a lot of becoming as well, becoming a slasher, becoming a vampire, becoming a werewolf. Um, and we read for our conversation, we read I Was a Teenage Space Jockey,
Mhm.
which I think we can pretty firmly say is very much becoming earning an identity, right? And I come back to the question about horror, about the darkest parts of literature. How do these becoming these ideas of identity work best in horror for you?
Oh, I think it's just horror is usually a pressure cooker, and pressure cookers transform things into other things, you know? So I think horror stories are really built to be transformation chambers for
Mm,
characters.
transformation chambers, I like that. Where Baby Red transforms into Red, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
And the fly always works its way into that transformation chamber as well,
Yeah,
or
Yeah,
some version of it.
it does. Yeah.
I want to hear from both of you because we read a lot of in I hate to use the word I don't even want to say the word literature but kind of canonical, especially in academics, we read a lot of coming of age that isn't in these dark spaces.
Mhm.
I want to hear from both of you about kind of the divide between what is called literature and maybe what is called commercial, or kind of the views on genre and how that separation comes about, or how we can kind of put that back together. What do you think?
I think, I mean, for me, the like thumbnail distinction is commercial makes money, literary wins awards, you know? I mean, there's a little crossover down again, but um that also breeds a lot of resentment, you know, because the
Mhm.
commercial writers want the awards and the literary writers want the checks, you know?
Yeah. What do you
Mhm.
think, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of truth, if not like a ton of truth to that. And even experiencing a little bit recently, it's funny. I mean, I feel like Steven and I have been a little bit more accepted into like literary circles, maybe than most horror
Mhm.
writers,
Mhm.
which is a shame. It's sort of, in both directions.
Mhm.
We got to do like a Pen America. So it's funny. Like, I feel like I have a lot more sort of like literary, what would be considered literary writers, sort of following on my Instagram and stuff. And it's just kind of funny to see the two different sort of communities and how they how they interact with each other and how they interact with readers, and it is interesting. And I don't know. I think very shortly, if not now, I mean, I think horror is way more accepted than it used to be.
Mhm.
Um, in sort of, serious quote, whatever that means, literary circles. But
Yeah.
I mean, I think the circle's going to shrink enough that it's all going to have to, we're all going to have to accept each other because what is it, like 16% of adults read for pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
16% of like, millions and millions of people is still a lot of people, but I don't know. Like I'm on both sides. Like, oh man, like Steven said, like, the book I just finished, I dream of, I try to dream big, so I always get disappointed, and that keeps me going because I really survive on spite. That's probably
Yeah.
really sad to admit. But yeah, no, like the next book, like, if it's good enough, I would love to have it win sort of like non-genre awards and hopefully people would consider it for it. At the same time, um, you know, some of the people in our horror community, it's like, man, you could not take yourself more seriously, but you could take your work more seriously. You could write better sentences. I don't know. I mean, some of that's maybe just me, having been around for a little bit longer and as an older writer. And, the weird conundrum as writers, I don't know, Steve, if you ever thought of it this way, but like, I'm finally getting to a point like, I hate when people use the term master of horror or master of anything. It's like, because no, you can't master writing,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
any other sort of loaded terms that are on
Mhm.
with master.
Yeah.
However, like, I have like, oh, like I feel like you get to a point where you can do some cool stuff that maybe, that you probably couldn't have done 10 years ago. Um, but sometimes it feels like the people reading it haven't changed like you have changed, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
But I don't know. I mean, it's all fun. Any writer I have, like, I'm so grateful or any reader, excuse me,
Mhm.
I'm so grateful for it. So I don't know. Again, I'm talking around answers I don't have.
I think as far as like writers called literary and then writers called horror, I think that if there is any friction between either their readerships or them themselves, it's that since horror can provoke a visceral response, it's considered kind of lowbrow or base or not serious, whereas other lit fiction might provoke a cerebral response, an intellectual response. And um, I don't think horror is limited to visceral. I think horror can do visceral better than anything except erotica, maybe.
Mhm. I always the word visceral definitely applies to erotica, right?
Mhm.
But that's still so far on the fringe of acceptable
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
gonna be tough to find classrooms
Well,
that are
I
teaching,
mean,
right?
yeah, it's tough, but I mean, romantasy is the king of the world right now, or the queen of the world, or the boss of the world, you
You
know?
are not lying. You are not lying. I can't tell you how many I was teaching dual credit for a little while and how many of
Mhm.
my high school students were kind of sneaking reads of A Court of Thorn and Roses in,
Mhm.
and then trying very hard to make sure that I didn't really know what they were reading. Like
Yeah,
I no, I get
yeah.
you. I get you. I'm
But
not
man,
too
back in
far
the
off.
80s, it was Clan of the Cave Bear. That also had all
Yeah.
the over the top sex scenes, just with cave people. And
Yeah.
I think what we can the lesson we can take from that is people need those sex scenes. So just wrap them up in a different wrapper every decade.
Yeah. Yeah. To wrap up the sex scenes, there's layers of wisdom in there. So I want to the last thing I want to get at before we move on to my next setup is we mentioned like the cerebral nature of literature, like getting an intellectual reaction. Um, what is your sense? I mean, I'm fortunate to teach for an institution that celebrates genre, celebrates horror, and not just lets me teach a horror class, but is excited to actually have it happen. And I know, Stephen, you got some support like that too. But in kind of those circles where the expectation is that writing is literary,
Mhm.
are either of you still getting some kind of resistance or still having to explain the merit of horror anywhere?
I don't have to at my work. No, at my work, people like a lot of my colleagues in the department teach my books, and I come to their
Yeah.
classes and talk to students like this, and it's all good, and they like it. They're to a person disappointed with my answers, because they say, "Did you mean this, this, this?" And they have this huge argument, and I'm like, "It's just a Def Leppard lyric, that's making it complicated."
Yeah.
Because I don't think complicated thoughts. I just think of things that I think will be fun or funny, and I do those things, and I try to make it work with itself.
Mhm.
But the one time I will sometimes feel a little, I don't know if friction is the right word, but like at different festivals, conventions, I'll get on a panel with fantasy and science fiction writers. They'll want to do like one of each of us or something, to and
Collect the whole set.
Yeah, the whole set, right? The collector set. And I generally will at least have tried to read some of their work so I can know who these people are and what they're doing and what they're saying. But then they all will generally say to me, "Oh, horror, I can't read horror," you know? And so it's kind of funny that we're expected to kind of know everything, but because we write horror, nobody has to engage us, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a little out of balance.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, similar experience. I mean, although I teach at a high school and I teach math, which is in itself its own thing. Although this is going to be my last year, barring the unforeseen. Um, but yeah, like I said, I think the response is has been more accepting, but like it's fine. I still the reaction that Steven describes, I see more just from like the general public.
Mm.
And you know, you see it, you definitely see it at general festivals too.
Mhm.
Um, but you know, I've been pleasantly surprised by, you know, from some, you know, quote unquote literary writers that I meet and like, oh, you know, I read this book of yours and really loved it, which has been cool.
Mhm.
But yeah, but like, you know, at my school, like, or again, just like if someone asks you, hey, what do you, you know, what do you do? And if you happen to slip out, you're a writer, you know, they ask you what you write. You know, if you say horror, most of them are like, you know, I can't do that. In my head, I'm like, why can't you? Like,
Yeah.
I have a much harder time understanding the other person who says, oh, I can't do anything scary because I mean, I don't know how you get through your life without that.
Yeah. I mean,
Uh,
avoidance, right?
yeah.
Hiding in a hole. The magic systems escape me. Like I love dragons. I love swords. I love me
Mhm.
some D&D. And I'm stuck sometimes with magic systems.
Yeah. No, the
Uh,
magic systems are tricky to make consistent and
yeah.
not like just whimsical, you know?
Yeah.
You know, Paul and I, we often get called like literary horror writers, which is, of course, an insult to the rest of horror, you know. So
Yeah.
we try not to like wear that cap. But I really think that when the readership, the audience, the crowd, whoever says literary horror, what they're meaning is, I don't like horror, but I like this, so I have to call it something different in order to like it, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Again, relabeling it to make it,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
You know, and I try to think of it, and well, I'll try to explain to people if, you know, if they haven't run away. Um, well, like, you know, literary fiction is, you know, it's a genre. It's, you know, it's the idea of employing, obviously, you know, theme, symbol, and, you know, and I think commercially, if you say literary fiction, that sort of implies less of an intention to plot, which I know
Mhm.
Victor Laval has talked in interviews about this way, you know, way smarter than I am.
mhm.
You know, so if you say to someone literary horror, you say that to me, it's like, oh, this book is more interested in the characters, you know, and other stuff as opposed to just like the plot and like the plot focused stuff. But
Yeah, yeah,
not everyone is gonna sort of go
yeah.
to that sort of understanding, I guess.
Right.
I wish that literary could just be an adjective that could go in front of any genre. Because to me, literary means you can return to it
Yeah.
time after time and get more and more out of it, you know, which doesn't mean that doesn't denigrate one read books either. Like I can read Dan Brown and milk it for all it's worth in one read, and that doesn't mean it's a bad book, you know. It just
Mhm.
means it's not what I call literary because I'm not going to return to it to get more and more.
Yeah, yeah. The complexity, and I think there's something about prose too
Mhm.
that gets caught up in the literary too,
Yeah.
which is not a denigration of
Mhm.
straightforward direct, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know what? Like my take on it is like when you see the thrillers on whatever the version of the spinner rack is in today's world, you know, maybe
Mhm.
that's an Amazon carousel or something, but those books they're fat, you know, 500, 600 pages, whereas literary novels they tend to tap out, you know, under 300 pages anyways.
Mhm.
And the reason for that is often that these literary novels are making the story happen in the sentence instead of the
Mhm.
sentences and the prose being a lens which focuses on the story and delivers the story. Like in a lot of books, it's basically a movie on the page where the words are what you look through to see this magic thing happen. This like Jack Reacher doing his thing or whatever it is, you
Yeah.
know. But then other books, the story is the writing, the punctuation, the word choice, the verb,
Mhm.
everything, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for that, I mean, I want to pull those back to examples from both of your careers. I'm thinking about Mongrels and Buffalo Hunter x Hunter, which I think are in some way maybe distant cousins of becoming, but happening in the structure in the sentence, and I'm also thinking about I'm going to go maybe a little obscure, but 19 snapshots from Dennisport, right? Where
Yeah.
which I didn't have my students read that. I was uh I was torn, but where rather than rather than having a character experience some things, we're getting these little vignettes that are really
Mhm.
descriptions of stills that create a narrative where we're getting that story out of those individual moments rather than following, like being taken through, right?
Right.
I really like, and I want to hang on to the idea that, I don't want to say literary, but I want to say there's an elevation that we can achieve in writing where the story is in the prose and not behind
Mhm.
the prose,
Mhm.
whether that's structure or sentence work or word choice.
Mhm.
I really love that idea. I love that idea.
Mhm.
So I'm going to hang on to that. I'm going to put that in my pocket to share. We just talked a little bit about jobs, and I want to think about making time for writing. And I think the general question is just how do your day jobs interact with or interfere with or synergize with your writing?
Whenever I tell someone I'm still teaching high school, I feel like I crushed their dreams and they're so disappointed. Um, like, what? Like, you're not full time?
Mhm.
I mean, partly because I foolishly chose like a middle class lifestyle with the house and a couple of kids in college and stuff like that.
Mm.
And honestly, I probably could have quit a few years ago, if not just for like this ingrained
Mhm.
averseness to financial risk. Um, I don't know, and like, born from, if I'm going to self-analyze myself, my dad was a factory worker and my mom was a bank teller, and they fought all the time about money. So like, working two jobs for me, it was like, okay, as long as I don't have to worry, I have those sort of like discussions. So I
Yeah.
mean, part of it's there, and I also enjoy teaching too. I probably should say that.
Mhm.
Um, so for me, like I didn't start writing until I started teaching. So they've always been sort of intertwined. It's always been like this constant state of time management and looking for time, stealing an hour, stealing two, during the school year.
Mhm.
And for me, actually, when I was younger, it was a great lesson. I couldn't afford to light candles and and do uh, and do magic shrines to the muse. I
Mhm.
couldn't fuck around. I have an hour. I'm going to sit down and write for an hour.
Yeah.
Um, and I think if you obviously it was hard at first, but if you do that enough time, like you train, I mentioned your subconscious before. I'm
Mhm.
totally convinced you train your subconscious. Just just like you would train any other muscle, just the act of repetition gets it going.
Yeah.
And the fun part for me is like sometimes you train your brain without even recognizing it. Like if you're listening to a certain soundtrack for a book or, anyway, that just lets you sort of fall into the hole in a page. So yeah, it's always been, so actually for me, like the hard part sometimes is when I have more time, like I wish I could write for like 3 hours straight. I can't. Like I usually tap out at like 2, and that's a long
Mhm.
time. Maybe if I have time, I'll go back later in the afternoon. But the one year I did take off, sorry, this is a long answer. The one year I did take a sabbatical from writing, I did find that I could build up to longer times, but it took, it took practice.
Yeah.
So, um, the only other thing I would mention for, everybody else working a day job is, for me, what worked was setting reasonable, makeable goals and building in that, hey, you're going to miss some of your daily goals, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Um, I would break into daily, weekly, and monthly. And the monthly, I would try to hew close to the with the wiggle room left open in the daily and weekly. Because, I don't know, like most people, I don't know. I beat myself up a lot when I'm writing. My inner editor never shuts up. It's
Mhm.
hard enough dealing with that than feeling disappointed that, oh, I didn't make this word count or I didn't work today.
Yeah.
But for me, I found setting manageable goals helped.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I like teaching too. That's why I'm still doing it, But yeah, the last like 2 hours I've been sitting outside critiquing stories, and I wrote one of my students a 3-page single space letter about a comma, and I live for that. I love talking punctuation. I think I missed my calling. I should have been a punctuation teacher because that is what I love more than anything. Um, it's so much fun. But yeah, who knows how much longer I'll keep doing it because not every aspect of teaching is great. In the classroom with the students is great, but there's
Mhm.
other junk
Yeah.
that, pull comes around it, as y'all all know. Um, but how to schedule time, and I'm like Paul, like my writing sessions are each 90 minutes, maybe 100 minutes. Any longer
Mhm.
than that, I can write for 14 hours straight, but I'm gonna have to delete 12 and a half of those hours because it's just junk, It doesn't matter.
The
Um,
the idea of deleting entire hours instead of blocks of words is so frightening.
But Stephen, I've also, like, you write small chunks too.
Yeah. Oh, I did.
Yeah.
I'll come in here and write for 12 minutes, and
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. And um And man, when you were talking about goals, I was like getting nervouser and nervouser because I'm terrified of I've got
Oh
to make
yeah.
1,000 words a day. I don't know. I don't think I could. I don't know if I have the discipline for that.
Yeah.
I'm more of a burst writer. Like when it's on fire inside me, then I load up my fingers, and then
Mm.
I never feel guilty. I'll go 2 or 3 days without writing. And that's great. But like I said, I spent the last couple hours critiquing stories, and those are hours I could have been writing. But to tell you the truth, I wouldn't have been writing. I would have been playing outside in the sun. So I mean, it doesn't make that much difference. And I have had time off. Like I'll take sabbaticals or just have take a semester off or something, and I'll think, man, I'm gonna do so much work. I just watch Rockford Files for like 4 months, and I don't. So what I've found is the more I have to do, the more I get done.
Oh, 100%.
Mm,
Yeah. And I tell that to like high school parents all the time. Like when
mhm,
kids are struggling, they're like, oh, we're going to take them out of this sport or this activity.
mhm,
Like, no, like that doesn't, it never works that way.
mhm,
Like being busy forces you,
mhm.
because it becomes so much easier to procrastinate and just look at your
Yeah,
phone and
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah. Watch Rockford Files, but I mean, Rockford Files is not a bad pastime either. You learn a lot watching Rockford Files.
Yeah,
I
but at the
think
same
there's
time,
something.
like Stephen, you also like you write stories on planes. I
Yeah.
was I was sitting on a panel with you once, or most of us had like little notes out while,
Uh, uh,
writing down what people are saying. I was watching
uh,
you and I
uh.
was like, "You're writing a story right now, aren't you?" He's like, "Yeah."
I've got right over here. I just found on the ground. I've got all these stacks of. I do that everywhere I go, and I've got all these little
Uh,
stapled sheets of paper I tear off that are stories, and I just never transcribe them. They're just all building up over here because I don't like transcribing. I like writing.
Yeah. Yeah.
hmm.
I also once heard you say, Stephen, while if you're writing something, you should write it with the same veracity, the same hunger as if you're devouring a really good paperback.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, I think so. Yeah.
and, and I think that kind of speaks to what both of you were saying with these small moments, these small moments, these little bursts of time. While we're busy, we know that 12 minutes is like we have 12 minutes and that's it.
Hmm.
Right. So those 12 minutes need to be really vitally spent, really intentionally spent. Whereas if you have
Oh,
4 months, 12 minutes suddenly feels like, you
yeah.
know, it feels like we have all the time in the world.
You're totally right. And actually, there's a step above that too. If you steal time, then you spend it even better. Like if I'm supposed to be picking someone up at the airport and I choose to write a story instead, then I know that better be a good story because they are going to be mad at me.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, which I think that gets me to something we kind of it was a question I was going to ask that I think we've answered just a little bit. So I'm going to ask it a little different way. Neither of you in your making time for writing have mentioned any kind of ritual, any kind of circumstance that must exist. Setting goals, but also kind of letting go of those ideas. Um, do you have set practices when you're writing, or are you just reaching for what you've got and going forward? Is there some kind of blend? What's the actual practical daily minutia look like?
I think for me, anyways, ritualizing your writing is just stocking yourself with excuses not to write. If your cat is not over here, if the glass of tea isn't here, or whatever, there's all these rituals. We're all superstitious as writers,
Yeah.
and it's really easy to come up with rituals. But the only ritual I have is, I guess, I like to have music on. Maybe that's a ritual. I don't know.
Um, I'll I'll have music on if there's other loud stuff happening, but otherwise, like I think I would prefer silence. Although sometimes, like you listen to it so often that like if I feel stuck, I'll turn on the music.
Mhm.
Um, with the novel I just finished and turned in, I suppose I did have a little bit of a ritual, but I don't want to call it a ritual. I think it was more with each novel, not so much the short stories, but now that, I've written, was it 10, 11 novels? I'm trying to balance it. Like, I want the confidence that I've done this before, but I also want to make it feel completely different. Like, I'm
Mhm.
approaching this in some different way.
Mhm.
Yeah, just to not fool me into being excited, but I want it to feel different. Like, I want it to feel challenging.
Mhm.
And so this book that I wrote was going to have a lot of sort of humorous elements to it, hopefully. Um, and what I settled on doing just to help me get in the mindset or remind myself, hey, this, certainly parts of this book are going to be different. I I reread some Patrick DeWitt novels, who's a humor writer that I really love. But before I would start writing, I'd only reread 3 pages every day. When I sat to write, I reread 3 pages. And actually, I found it was like I was, instead of avoiding going to the computer, I was like, oh, I get to reread 3 pages. And then dive into this book. Like I found it as like a new sort of exciting way to approach the book.
Yeah.
And I was a little worried. It's like, oh no, am I going to be addicted to this? But I've started the next novel, and that approach isn't going to work. I'll have to find another one.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. You have to like start catching cats and torturing them or something, man.
Wow.
eh,
I can only put cat blood on the page as ink.
yeah.
That's the way it's go. And it's got to be scared cat.
Yeah, yeah.
I was thinking about writing to music. I've tried, and I kept getting feedback like, "Why do your characters all talk in Blackberry Smoke lyrics?"
Yeah, yeah.
I knew that I kind of had to step away from that.
Yeah, I can only listen to instrumentals while I'm writing. I
Uh,
can't listen to things with lyrics.
well,
Yeah,
like Paul said, like I can only the music I listen to when I write is stuff that I know so well I don't have to actually think about it, you know?
yeah,
And the reason I like to listen to music is because it occupies like some critical part of my mind that if it doesn't stay occupied, it's always going to be second guessing what I'm putting on the page,
oh
you know?
yeah,
And I don't need that critical component in the act of writing. That just slows me down.
yeah, yeah. That kind of brings me to what your process or practice would be, but I think we've kind of talked about that. But thinking back to maybe early career when first getting started, what did that look like? What did that look like for the first stories for the first books for you guys?
What look like? I'm sorry.
What did your process or practice look like early on?
Um my process early on was I remember on Thursday I have a story due on Friday and I have to write a story on Thursday and that's still my practice. That's still what I
Yeah,
do. Yeah, the editors always send me like polite emails like stories are due Tuesday and they'll send me this on Monday and I'll remember I'll have this like weird after school special flashback to me saying yes I'd write that story, you know, and then I have to write that story really fast. So that's the way I always do
and
it,
an
man.
actual thought bubble just
Yeah.
materializes in the real
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
Um, well, I mean, when I was first starting out, I was much better at stealing time. Like I would be writing when my kids were taking a quiz. They could have been cheating their asses off. I had no idea. But for novels, I would say for my first novels, um, I I would say like about three-fourths of maybe the first eight novels that I wrote, I wrote like plot summaries first.
Okay.
Some would be more detailed than others. And it started with this weird detective novel I wrote called The Little Sleep. So I
Hmm.
definitely did not feel confident enough to be able to make up the mystery, the plot of the mystery as I was going. So it was helpful to have sort of, things changed as I went, but I found it helpful to have a little bit of a skeleton or a map there. But I didn't do that for A Head Full of Ghosts. That one I didn't do an outline. Um, in some, like sometimes I don't know if I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but like when I was trying to get new book deals, they would say, hey, we need to see 50 pages in a summary.
Mhm.
So sometimes I was forced to write summaries why I wasn't necessarily going to write one. And some of those maybe I only summarize like parts of the book. Um, but with this most recent run of, I guess it's the last four novels, I haven't written a plot summary. So I don't know if that means I'm getting lazier. Uh, I do take like a ton of notes as I go though, and usually like when I'm going, like I'll write what I think might be happening next. So I'm sort of like outlining the plot as I go, but
Yeah.
just a little bit of a peek ahead at a time.
I think that kind of gets us to talking maybe about planners and pantsers and planters, right? And I think I have this idea that a pantser can become a planter, like it's somebody who's just writing, uh, um, letting the story grow as they go, can become a planner. But I don't know if the flow chart works in the other direction. Do you think you can go back from and Paul, you're the first person who I've heard say like starting with planning, but now kind of just backing off of it, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if I have a question with that. I think I might just be observing. I might
Yeah,
just be
no.
observing.
Um, I don't know. Like like I said, I like, and I'm definitely actively trying to make every book approach it differently. It's not to say I'm gonna take an entirely new approach to writing because I'm gonna have sort of the things that I do, but like
Yeah.
I think it's with the idea that I'm trying to I do want to challenge myself. I should feel uncomfortable. I don't want to feel totally comfortable. I don't
Mhm.
think it would be a very good book if I felt like 100% comfortable and it was just like, all right, it's just a matter of typing it out.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, so I don't know. I'm sure I could go back to outlining if I felt it was necessary, but
Mm.
it hasn't really come. The last four anyway.
You know, for when I'm considering a book, I'll have like six ideas. Five of them are doable, and one of them is completely stupid, and I always do the stupid one, you know? I only want to, that's the only novels I'm ever interested in writing are the ones that seem like they're built to fail, you know? Or
Mhm.
I always try to set a challenge for myself with each book. I guess maybe that's another way to say it. Like with Buffalo Hunter, I thought, I wonder if I can keep cats alive, because I know I can't keep dogs alive, but I might could keep a couple of cats alive, you know? So that was really hard. And in other books, I'll have somebody drink a cup of coffee and not throw up, and that's a huge feat for me. You know, I can't imagine that being in the real world. And so I always had these little challenges and obstacles in there that I then try to like ramp up to and ramp away from, or insulate, maybe I should say, such that the reader doesn't see how weird that is to me, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, I think yeah, thank you for that. That's all I've got for that. uh I want to throw out to students. If you have questions, throw them in the chat for me, please. Please do not ask them out loud. Throw them in the chat. We will get to this last little section, and then we'll start getting to student questions that I'll read off for you. The first thing, these both are kind of big questions. What do you wish you'd known about writing and the publishing industry before you started? Let's just drop into that one first. What do you wish you would have known?
I think what I wish I would have known doing my first couple of books, maybe first three books, was um, you can't do everything at once. Like I think with starting out my career, well, number one, I didn't know it was a career, but number two, I thought I'm never gonna have this chance again to get to the bookshelf, and so I want to put everything I can think of onto the page with every single page, and the result I think are books that are kind of like 10 pounds of sausage stuffed in a 5 pound little skin or whatever
That was
sausage.
like my burrito today. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
Too many
And
scoops of rice.
but as I started to get into more and more books, I realized that that's not how you do it really, you know, or that's not the way it's going to connect with readers necessarily. What I tell my students is every novel is basically you have three or four events. Those are like tent poles in the book, and it'll take you 60 pages to get up to the tent pole, the top of the tent pole, 60 pages to get down, 60 pages up to the next one, and that's kind of how you. That's the to me, that's the way to think about a novel. And the way not to think about a novel is tent poles into the horizon. It goes forever and ever because the book is probably not going to be 2,000 pages long. It's going to be 400 pages long, but it's going to be overpacked. You know, it's going to have not enough space between the tent poles.
Um, I guess my answer will be a little bit more about 'cause I don't know how to write a novel. I just know how to write the books that I write.
Mhm.
Um, or more, I guess, more based on just like big publishing stuff. So, like, I mentioned my novel Little Sleep, which sold to Henry Holt and was published in 2009. And so when that sold, I thought like, this is it. I made it. Like I'm with the big publisher. After having done like a couple of books with the indie presses. Um, and I just like, oh, like they're going to take care of everything. I don't have to worry about
Mhm.
publicity and stuff like that. And it was no, like you have to do as much of your own stuff and be as much of an advocate for yourself, even more so with a big publisher compared to a smaller independent publisher. And sort of
Yeah.
learn that lesson the hard way. I also wish I knew I could say no. I mean, it worked out, but I also think that's an important thing for young writers to hear or new writers is you can say no to the editor. Now, granted, you feel like it's, totally human to think, oh, if I say no, they're not going to put much stuff behind the book and, they're not going to want to work with me. Obviously, you can't be a jerk about it, but, and the saying no bit was I had a debut novelist, and we were talking about that. Now, granted, she had worked in publishing, so she knew a little bit about how the sausage, if we continue with that metaphor, was made. She reminded me, she's like, yeah, I wish more writers knew they could say no. Like, if you don't like the cover, or if they insist on changing your title, you can say no because the reasons that some publishers are wanting to change your title grow more stupid with each passing day.
Mhm.
It's because it's about like it's not searchable, it doesn't fit the algorithm. It's, people ruining the world with math who don't understand math at all, which is a whole nother side topic. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine trying something like that with you would be just the wrong wall to try to climb. Messing with the math.
But
Yeah.
yeah, the editors often do want to change the titles I've found, and sometimes they're 100% right, and sometimes you don't know where they're coming from. I guess all the time
Yeah.
you don't know where they're coming from, but sometimes they're right too.
Yeah. I know, and that's hard. Like it shouldn't automatically be a knee jerk. No.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, like I think the only title I changed was The Cabin at the End of the World. When I turned it in, it was The Four. And they were right.
Mhm.
What my second choice was a much better title.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Let's see. Only Good Indians changed titles. My Heart is a Chainsaw changed titles. Babysitter Lives changed titles. Also, Last Final Girl changed titles.
Mm.
My initial title for The Last Final Girl was Part Two, which I thought was brilliant, and everyone told me this is not brilliant, and I insisted it was brilliant. And then one of them finally said, "Just call it The Last Final Girl," and I said, "Whatever, I don't care about this book anymore." And that's the much better title than Part Two.
I think
I kind of like
I mean
part two.
I think part two is brilliant for that book after you've read it. Like
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
Yeah.
know, it's
Well, the other, secret, I don't know, you probably can only do this once in your career though, but like if, so they wanted to change Survivor Song, the title.
mm,
And so they asked me to come up with suggestions. And so I
Mhm,
gave them a title that I knew that they were not going to like.
mhm,
I was going to call it "You Will Not Feel Me Between Your Teeth" because it was way
mhm,
too wordy. He's like, we can't have teeth in the title. I'm like, why?
mhm.
And so they're like, fine, we'll go back to Survivor Song. So you can pull the old switcheroo.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
although I kind of weirdly liked the other title I suggested better. So no one was happy when we stuck with Survivor Song.
Yeah, like Babysitter Lives, my initial title for it was The Long Halloween. And the publisher, it came out audio first. They said, we don't want this to be an October book. We want it to be a year-round book, so you can't have Halloween in the title. Like that kind of
mm,
marketing stuff, you know? And I kind of was bummed about that.
mm.
I liked it last night before Halloween, but then I elected to call it The Lizard with the Glass Throat, which everyone was like, "Yes, that's a great title." But then publishers often do a thing I've found where they all get behind a title until like 2 days before it's finalized, and they say, "Nope, not that title. Think of another one in 48 hours." You know, that's what they did with this
Jeez.
one. So yeah, that's fun, man.
Wow.
Say no, Stephen. You can say no
You can
sometimes.
say no. So we have I have one more question before we do have some questions in chat. I'll
Mhm.
ask one more quick question and then we'll get to those chat questions. What piece of advice would you give to writers at the beginning of their discovery and education processes, just barely on their wobbly baby deer legs?
Oh man, do your math homework. Don't use ChatGPT or AI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, read. I mean, for any course of study that you're doing, reading, it could be nonfiction, it could be your interest, it could be outside of your interest, is only going to make you, a better student,
Mhm.
better reader, better writer. Just read.
Yeah, I agree with reading. I think I would use that old maxim from poetry that you can't write free verse until you can write form, you know? So which is to
Mhm.
say, um, make a mess if you want, but know the mess you're making, you know? Like don't play with punctuation if you don't actually know how punctuation works. Mhm.
Yeah. What if that's the bait though, to get a three-page single space letter from Stephen Graham Jones? All right, so we'll get to the questions in the chat here. Devin um, asks, Stephen writes about drinking coffee to have a vomit follow, or is that something you do yourself in real life? You're not a
No,
coffee guy, Stephen.
yeah, I have not. I've drank coffee on accident a couple of times when I was young. Maybe about 12 years ago. No, it's about 20 years ago. I was really tired at 3 in the morning, driving many hours, and I stopped and bought a little like espresso in a can. And I told myself I gotta
Uh,
stay awake, so I slammed it, and then I was throwing up like a quarter mile later. But
Wow.
I don't like people always come through town and they say, I want to interview you, meet me at a coffee shop," and I always say, nah, how about we go to a burrito place? You know, because not gonna, because coffee shops have the quality of smelling like coffee, you know, and that makes me have to hold my breath. And when I hold
Yeah.
my breath, I can't do an interview very well. I get all swimmy in the head, you know.
Okay.
So, yeah, coffee to me, like when my wife leaves coffee grounds in the sink, I have to run away and go stand in the backyard for a while because it's dangerous times, man.
Yeah, I think if when I start to get to do these things in person, I think it's going to be candy shops. Like we'll talk over some gummy worms or something.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Sixlets even.
Sixlets are the best, man. Yeah.
Yeah. Maya asks, what is your process to go from idea to story, to turn an idea into a story?
hmm.
I mean, for me, ideas are worthless. I sold all my idea notebooks to a library because they were no good. I had like probably 120 journals of them. Yeah, ideas they're easy. They're like you can come up with an idea in 10 seconds. Ideas just mean nothing, but it's the voice. I don't mean the diction, but I mean the like angle at which exposition and story flows onto the page. That's what you need to make anything work. And
Hmm.
so the way an idea sparks into like some sort of product or story is I just move through the world and like I guess the way I would say it is I just go around the world rubbing my heart on all the handrails, and I just be open and wait for that thing to come alive in my head, and then I write the thing really fast. But I found I can't muscle it onto the page. I just have to wait for um like like a fairy godmother touching me on the head with her sparkly wand, and then it's alive in my head. And I wish there were like a mechanism I could activate or a muscle I could use, but there doesn't seem to be.
That's a great answer. Um, so I mean, I'm not like swimming in ideas. I mean, I have like a lot of notebooks. I mean, because I guess I think less of them as ideas as like little scenes. Um, and if it feels like, oh, this would be part of like this really big thing, I've never, I'm stumbling around this, but I've never had like a short story blow up into a novel. And I've never had what I thought was a novel like peter out as a short story. I mean, I've had novels that failed.
Hmm.
So I don't know, for some reason, I just know, okay, this is a novel or this is a short story. For me, the test is if something new and shiny like pops into my head, I might jot it down, but I won't do anything with it right away. I'll let it lie for a few weeks. And then if I find that I'm continually going back and thinking about it, and thinking about it when I'm not actively thinking about it, like if it just occurs to me while I'm
Mm.
making food or doing dishes or something like that, to me it's like, oh, okay, that's I'm trusting again my subconscious that it's letting me know that I do want to, if it's a novel, I do want to spend a year with this thing.
Hmm. Yeah, that's kind of what Stephen King says, right? He says he doesn't write ideas down because those are just bad idea notebooks. If it's a good
Mhm.
idea, it'll come back over and over and over, and you
Yeah.
won't be able to not to write it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, awesome. So Heidi asks for Stephen, Dark Mill South is one of the best character names ever. And then let me find it. There it is. Best character names ever. Your character names are unique. Do they come to you with the character or do you shape them to carry meaning?
Dark Mill South to me is my mishearing of a lyric in a Jerry Reed song. Um, what is that? What is that song? I can hear it in my head. Anyways, it's just a mishearing of a lyric. A lot of my stuff comes from mishearings. Lately I was talking about bad idea notebooks, but I have started keeping a list lately of character names. And I usually nab those last names from the credit rolls of movies because there's a lot of wild names in there I would never hear otherwise. And so I scribbled them down. And sometimes I use them, sometimes I don't. But I do that because I have a bad problem of naming all my characters Martin, and that's not going to work.
I named so many of the same characters Tim or
Yeah.
Timothy.
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
when I put together growing things, like I had all these short stories. I'm like, oh my God, how many Tims are here? I gotta change a couple.
The movie credits thing is great. You might be the only person sitting through the credits in a Marvel movie for the actual names and not the scene. That's pretty
Not for
great.
Samuel Jackson to pop up at the end.
Yeah.
Professor Heidi Jewell asks, Stephen, you seemed to have a purpose and built to a point in the Buffalo Hunter Hunter, which is her second favorite after the Fast Red Road.
Mm.
But did you have an intended audience in mind for either of those books?
Fast Red Road was me trying to be Thomas Pynchon or Gerald Visitor, so I was appealing to like 600 people, and across 40 years. Buffalo Hunter Hunter, I wanted to talk to the vampire people, I think.
Yeah,
Mm.
that makes sense.
Mm.
Makes sense.
Like literal vampires or people who like
The
vampires?
the fans, the people who are
Okay.
diehard, who like live in the hunger,
Yeah.
they
Live
love
in the
it.
hunger.
Yeah.
Get the
Yeah.
false the fangs and everything permanently.
Yeah.
Vampire
Um,
people.
yeah,
Hmm.
you've given them something to chew on there for sure.
Oh boy.
DJ asks, any tips for cultivating a better attention span? Suggestions for being able to sit down and engage fully with writing or even reading without internal distractions.
Hmm.
Um, so I haven't gone as far as the following, but when I first started writing, one of my mentors is this great American novelist, Stuart Onan, who his career is like he's written every different kind of novel that you could imagine. Uh, really gracious person, and I really admire him. Anyway, he used to talk about how he would literally belt himself into a chair for 2 hours so he couldn't get up. So
Hmm.
I have adopted, without the belting in the chair, I've adopted, hey, if I'm going to sit here for an hour, I'm going to sit here for an hour. If that means I'm going to stare at the screen and two words get written, I will do that for an hour.
Mhm.
Part of that is just to train, but honestly, what ends up happening more often is like my brain is like Homer Simpson's brain,
Mhm.
like where so many of the episodes is like, this is boring, I'm going to do something else. So typically, if it's rough going, nothing's happening, my brain will be like, after 5 minutes, like, fine, this sucks, I'll give you something, and then stuff starts happening.
Right.
Yeah, no, that Paul's answer is my answer, what I was gonna say. I did have something else to add. What was it? I used to put knives all around my keyboard to keep me from taking rests, and that'll keep you, I guess not literally on point, but it'll keep you focused.
It'll keep you upright.
Yeah.
It'll
Yeah.
keep you upright. Good. Imogen asks, any
Oh,
advice for,
I
yeah.
remembered. I remember what I was going to say. I was on a panel with a woman once, and she said the way she keeps herself focused when she wakes is she wants to write for like an hour after she wakes up. She'll get up, go straight from bed to the keyboard, and she won't let herself use the restroom until she's gotten X amount of words done. And I
Ooh,
think that'll make you get some words done.
yeah, sure will.
Mhm.
Sure will. Some of them might be ouch. Yeah, but yeah. Before I get to Imogen's question, Nikki suggests that the song is Amos Moses, Jerry
Yeah, that's
mentioned.
Amos Moses. Yeah. Yep. That's it.
All right. Imogen asks, any advice for someone who is a quote baby writer at an older age? And then what are your top three artistic influences? Doesn't have to be another writer.
Can Def Leppard be all three? Or...
Yeah, you're the boss.
No, no. For me, probably Larry McMurtry and Um, yeah, probably Def Leppard and Philip K. Dick. And I think as far as a baby writer starting at an older age, I think that's an advantage, really,
Yeah.
because I see so many people come out of MFA programs with dazzling skills, techniques, but they haven't lived enough to have stuff to say.
Mm.
And so if you're starting at a later age, you've already got stuff to say, you've seen things happen. Well,
Yeah, I mean, that part of it is my answer. That's not to say like a young person.
mhm,
Obviously, there are plenty of young people who have experience
mhm,
to write, but yeah, I mean, I tend to find some of my favorite writers tend to be
mhm.
start at an older age. I mean,
Yeah.
my first novel wasn't published till I was 38,
Mhm,
but I mean, not I don't think that's old anymore.
mhm.
I would kill five goats to be 38 again. Um,
Yeah.
maybe even six if you're gonna push me. Uh, yeah, it's funny. Like some of my artists as well would be musicians like Bob Mould slash Husker Du.
Mm.
Uh, it was really sort of like the first artist I fell in love with that made me want to like I want to try to play that in the guitar. Like I want to try to mimic the creation of something that I think is really cool. Um, and Stephen King was, turned me into a reader when I first read The Stand. But I'm wearing one of my favorite novels as a t-shirt right now, Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut.
Yeah.
And that
Like
didn't
that
come out
that
till his
book,
40s,
that
right? He was in his late 40s when that came out, wasn't he?
yeah.
Yeah.
And for that, I was like, oh, I didn't know. Like, I didn't know you could do that. Like, and some of my
Mhm,
favorite reads were like, I didn't know you could do like so with Vonnegut. It was just the voice and the weird structure, but it
mhm,
just seems so conversational, but still also like really smart and
mhm,
well written at the same time. Um, no, I mean, my favorite. I don't know, Steve, I'm sure you're the same way, like you, because you're a big music fan. You talk
mhm,
about music
mhm,
inspiring your stuff all the time. Like so
mhm,
many of my books have either started from lyrics or the titles come from lyrics. So
mhm,
music definitely is something that I go to frequently for inspiration.
Yeah,
mhm,
for sure. Um, Tonya Ramirez, our dean, actually.
mhm,
So that's the kind of support we're getting, which I really appreciate.
mhm.
Tonya asks, as a genre, horror is of course full of tropes. Do you think that there are tropes that arise within criticism of horror or the way that people talk about the genre? And if so, which ones interest you?
That's a really good question.
Hmm.
That's what I say when I don't have an answer. I'm just stalling. But it is
Sure.
a good, it is a really good question. I've never thought about that before. I think.
Like tropes within criticism
Yeah, that's
of
neat. I
horror. Hmm.
like that. I'm trying to think what I've seen that happens over and over. I mean, I see a lot of horror criticism say this is the same old thing, and but then they'll they'll say this is the same old thing, but they put their own spin on it, you know? And so that trick of saying that's a way of like smuggling across to the reader that we all know the formula of the haunted house or the slasher or whatever, you know? And I think it's a way that the critic situates you in a comfortable space and then tries to tell you, in spite of the fact that you know the formula, this still has something to offer, you know?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's hard to answer. I mean, I think because my mind keeps going to stuff that like happens online or in Goodreads, and I wouldn't consider that like
Yeah.
serious criticism, just like knee-jerk reactions or like, I think the most annoying ones like, oh, this isn't scary, so it's not horror, which is just such an absurd statement. And if anyone says that, I just glaze over and discount that person's opinion on pretty much everything for the rest of their lives. Uh, but also like again, this represents me being an old, and this is not meant for me, like the TikToking of criticism, where it's
Mhm.
like a book cover, trauma, friendship, like all these arrows.
Oh,
I'm like, is that like how we distill books now? Like, I mean, I think there's problems with that too, as a treating I don't know,
Yeah.
treating stories like they're that sort of boil downable. Like to me, like the reason why I'm a reader, I mean, I didn't know this when I first started, but like my favorite stories are the things that describe emotions and feelings that can only be described in that story. Like it
Yeah.
takes 400 pages to say what this is saying.
mhm.
And
Right.
if I were to try to say it, it would not come out as good. You wouldn't replicate that same sense or that same emotion in the same way. Um, so I don't know how you talk about that. So I'm a math teacher. I don't write criticism, so I don't know how that would translate to criticism. But anyway,
Yeah, I think that the idea that you can take a novel, which is this just wealth of ideas, and then suddenly in 6 seconds tell somebody everything they need to know about it, um,
slow
boggles
burn.
the
Sorry, I hate that.
yeah,
I
slow burn.
hate that. Like, what does it mean? Most people, I mean, it means, frankly, you're sort of admitting that, like, your attention wasn't kept, I guess. But
Yeah,
for most people, I think when they say slow burn, it means there wasn't like a lot of stabbings,
Yeah.
like in the first 40
low
pages or
body
something.
count.
A slow burn is a more thorough burn. You know, a fast
Yeah.
burn just burns the
Yeah. See,
outside.
that's a better way I should say
Yeah.
that from now on.
All right. Heidi ask Paul, Gloomy Sunday has the rep of being the saddest song ever written. Did it
Wow.
inspire the storyline of Head Full of Ghosts or come into play later as the novel developed?
Yeah, that came into play pretty early on, but as the story started happening, the fun part for me for that book was once I knew I couldn't avoid it's a possessions, novel. And once I knew I couldn't avoid the William Peter Blatty elephant in the room, that like freed me up to like, oh, I'm gonna just like roll in all the references and pull in as much as I can. So somewhere in my research, I came across Gloomy Sunday and sort of the apocryphal idea that that song was forcing, or people who were listening to that song were then committing suicide, which to me, in my mind, felt like it played a little bit with the idea of possession, etc. So I was like, oh, I have to work that song into the book.
I didn't know Bloody's middle name was Henry. I'm just learning this, man.
Ah, neither did I.
Yeah.
Stephen talked, this is from Bensu. Stephen talked about in the coffee conversation about writing things that challenged him, keeping
Mhm.
cats alive and such. Do you mean writing things that are alien to you? Is the challenge writing about an experience that you don't have, the stupid story idea?
I mean, yeah, I do like those little challenges of keeping a cat alive or drinking coffee or, those kind of little things. But in a bigger sense, it's stories that seem just like bad ideas. Like, I was a teenage slasher, I think is a bad idea, you know?
Mhm.
Like, how are you gonna get the audience to identify with, um, the person with the machete going around town chopping heads? You know, how are we gonna get the audience, the readers, to care about that person? And that seems like, just stupid. Why would you try that, you know? But when things are stupid, that's when I want to try them the most, you know?
Yeah.
Did you start with the title first, like literally? Oh, I was a teenage
I think I
slasher,
did.
or
I think I
yeah,
did. Yeah. And actually, I've used that title 3 times. I should stop using it. Like that story that y'all read for this. I was a teenage
yeah.
space jockey, and years
Mm.
ago, I did a short story somewhere. I was a teenage slasher victim. You know, so if people like try to search that novel up, they probably get other hits. You know.
It's effective marketing, I guess, right? If
Yeah,
you're not
maybe.
looking for distinctive numbers.
Yeah.
I do love starting a novel with like a title, like
Yeah.
because that's happened a couple times.
Yeah. I like it
Yeah.
too. You know,
I've
my novel Growing Up Dead in Texas. That I remember that's not my title. That's one of my grad students' titles. She came to my office and she said, "I'm going to write a book." And I thought of the perfect title. And she said, I shouldn't tell you. And I said, yeah, you shouldn't tell me. And then she said, I'm going to
Yeah.
tell you. And so she leaned forward, like whispering in my office would make it secret, you know? And she said, Growing Up Dead in Texas. And I was like, that is a good title. And then like 3 years later, I'd written a book and I emailed her and I said, hey, did you ever use that title? And she said, no, no, I might still. And I said, can I buy it from you? And she said, you can just have it. So I took it. But what she doesn't know is I was going to take it anyways.
Yeah, I feel like there are times I feel like I'm a much better title writer than a
Mhm.
writer.
Yeah.
Like I've got a
You know,
list of them.
I think if I could have any job in the world, I'd want to be a racehorse namer. That would be so
Oh,
fun
that would
because
be
they
cool.
have great
A
names.
racehorse
Wrestlers,
namer. I thought you said neighbor. I'm like a racehorse
neighbor.
neighbor. What? Yeah.
Oh,
That would
yeah.
be cool. That
I
would
wonder
be
how they're
cool.
peeing next door, man.
Jeff Kahn asks Stephen, uh, I heard you read from and you graciously signed The Bird Is Gone at a faux opium den bar in New Orleans
Yeah,
called the Dragon's Den or
yeah,
something.
yeah.
Looking back, is there anything you wish 2003/4 Stephen knew about writing that you know now, something you think young writers would be better off knowing? Paul, same question. Although, Paul, I don't think that you probably signed that book at that opium den.
I did not.
I think if I remember correctly, that might have been an absinthe bar, and my publisher had thrown me a party or so. I don't remember exactly, but obviously if it's an opium bar, you're not going to remember, right? But um, yeah, there is something I wish I knew, which I've been navigating it for about the past 2 years, is be careful about what contracts you sign, you know, because I've had so many of my old books wrapped up in battles and just lost forever and stuff like that. And I've been trying to get them back, and it takes some like entertainment lawyers and just so much maneuvering and registered letters and so much trouble that that's time I could spend hacky sacking or something, you know?
Yeah. Um, I don't know if this even is going to answer the question, but like, I don't know if like I would, you know, making the mistakes is part of the deal. Like as long as they're not catastrophic, right? As long as like,
Mhm.
you don't pay like $2,000 for someone to publish your novel and they just run away with it, like that would be really bad. But
Mhm.
you're all gonna make mistakes along the way, and it's okay. Like you're not, no one's ex no one's expected to be an expert when it comes to this,
Yeah.
and especially in an industry that is so inexpert. Like there's no guarantees anywhere. So like any what I would say, like going back, it's not even what I knew. Is like I just wish anything that would alleviate like the pressure off of the writing would anything
Mm.
that would make that the writing experience feel a little bit less fraught is worth it. So I mean, hopefully that answer helps you. Like if don't just little mistakes are going to happen. It's not going
Mhm.
to be the end.
Yeah.
Um, Steve and I did a interview for or I interviewed him for a Gothic American lit
Mhm.
journal. Um, and at one point, we both talked about how we were sort of glad that our paths sort of really were sort of very stumbly in the
Mhm.
beginning and very meandery. Partly because like it would have been a lot of weird pressure, and I don't know if I would have been able to handle it if like
Mhm.
to whatever level my books are successful now. If they were way back then, uh,
Yeah.
I think that would have really messed with my head.
I see so many writers have success with their debut novel.
Yeah,
I feel sorry for them. I mean, I'm jealous of them because of what if that happened to me when I was 28
yeah,
or whatever. But at the
Mm.
same time, those writers get locked into having to follow up that success with another huge success. And they usually get locked into writing that type of novel only too. And that can't be fun,
yeah,
man.
Yeah.
yep.
Uh,
Mm.
sorry. I've got two more questions. We've closed the chat. A student named Francisco asks, Paul, do you feel like the characters in Cabin at the End of the World or Knock at the Cabin were portrayed the way you imagined them in the movie?
Um, yeah, I thought my favorite part of the movie, which I like but hate the ending, and hate the title. Talk about titles, man. What?
Yeah.
Not even grammatically correct. Knock at the cabin. Sounds like a British comedy of manners. A knock at the cabin. Uh, anyway, no, my favorite part of the movie was the performances by the actors. I thought they really sort of nailed sort of the emotional lives of those characters. And it's fun when Batista was first announced. Initially, I was like, oh, that's not at all who I imagined. Because in the book, Leonard is described as like being in his early to mid 20s. Big giant guy. But after seeing the movie, I thought Batista was perfect. He had that menace, but he also had that sort of vulnerability as well.
Mm. Right on. And then our last question, and thank you so much for sticking around. Um, How often, if you, this is Imogen asking, how often, if you ever still do you feel a little imposter syndrome, or is it going to be a constant thing?
Sometimes if I'm wearing like nice clothes, I feel like I don't know if imposter is the right word. I feel like a traitor to my younger self, if that makes sense. I'm like, so I don't know if I've ever felt actual imposter syndrome though. I mean, um I've been all kinds of places I don't belong, but it's always fun for me.
Yeah, I mean, there's always the fear. It's like, oh, when are people going to find out that I don't know what the hell I'm doing?
Mm.
Um, but that's a part like that continues to drive me. Like I wasn't trained, in English. I don't have an English degree. I feel like I'm always playing catch up in terms of like, I do try to read things that I didn't read that like English major friends or, someone incredibly, like Stephen or someone really also really smart like John Langan who's read everything like, and neither of them ever lord over they're good about not, they don't lord over you like, hey, I read this and you didn't. But just when I hear them talk smartly about these books I haven't read, it's like, I have to try harder. I have to try more. So, but I hope that's like in a healthy way too. Like, I would hope neither of us ever get to the point where we're like,
Yeah,
where's our entourage? We are
yeah,
geniuses. Like,
Yeah.
exactly. Like I never want to feel like I have
get me my
authority.
sixlets.
Yeah, exactly. I always felt like John Updike, like in his head, sat on a throne and looked at everybody else. I never want to be like that. That would be
Yeah.
scary, I think.
Yeah.
Never, I just can't be trusted with anything approaching power. You
Yeah.
know?
No, I mean, in 30 years of teaching high school math, it will
Yeah,
forever leave me humbled. Not that
yeah,
I need it. I can't tell you how many times I've had kids giving me shit in a geometry class. And I've said a few times, like, outside of here, there are people that think I'm cool. You don't understand. And they're like, no. Like, so yeah.
I'm gonna save that line. Somebody
Yeah.
outside this room thinks I'm cool, you guys.
Yeah, use it. Yeah.
That was great. All right. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you very much. Stephen and Paul, you're awesome. Thank you for spending time with us. This has been The Right Mind. Have a fantastic day. And yeah, cheers. Thanks for being here, everybody.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
See you Friday, Paul.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.